Has this ever happened to you? You find yourself drawn to a man who seems to possess a certain depth, a stillness in his eyes that hints at a world unspoken. He is not the boisterous alpha of the boardroom, but the quiet observer, the one whose silence speaks volumes. You crave connection with this man, not the shallow pleasantries of surface-level conversation, but a true merging of souls. You want to speak of dreams and fears, of the scars that have shaped you and the philosophies that guide your journey. You want to venture beyond the guarded walls of the ego and into the sacred sanctuary of the soul. But every time you try, you feel a subtle retreat, a tightening in his posture, a flicker of panic in his gaze. He offers a quick, dismissive answer and deftly changes the subject, leaving you standing on the precipice of vulnerability, all alone. The disappointment is a familiar ache, isn't it? That feeling of being misunderstood, of having your desire for depth mistaken for a demand, a burden, or worse, a threat. This is a common pattern, and it reveals a powerful truth about the modern masculine psyche. He is a king without a kingdom, a warrior without a battle, and in the absence of external purpose, his internal world has become a fortress. He has been conditioned to be a rock, a pillar of strength, and to show any sign of emotional fragility is to risk the entire structure collapsing. He perceives your invitation to depth not as a gift, but as a test he is destined to fail. For within him lies a shadow, a vast, unacknowledged landscape of insecurity, unhealed wounds, and suppressed grief. When you approach him with your own vulnerability, your light shines a little too brightly on that dark terrain, and the instinct is to recoil, to run back into the safe, sterile world of sports, statistics, and career ambitions. This is not a matter of his lack of feeling. It is a matter of his unconscious. For the modern man, the unconscious is not a mystical realm to be explored. It is a swamp to be avoided at all costs. He fears what lurks there, the raw, untamed emotions that society has told him are unmanly. He has built his entire sense of self, his ego, on the foundation of emotional control and detachment. Your desire for genuine connection, your willingness to dive into the depths, triggers his deepest fear. The fear of losing control, of being seen in his true, unadorned state, and of being found wanting. He projects his own unintegrated shadow onto you, seeing your emotional authenticity not as a source of strength, but as a chaotic force that threatens his carefully constructed reality. He believes that by showing you his true self, he will be exposed as weak, broken, and undeserving of your respect or affection. This is the great deception of the masculine unconscious, and it is the primary obstacle you must navigate with wisdom and compassion, not with a battering ram of emotional demands. The Stoics, those ancient masters of self-mastery, understood this dance between the inner and outer world. They taught that true strength lies not in suppressing emotion, but in observing it without being consumed by it. Seneca would say, "He who is brave is free," but the modern man has misunderstood this. He believes freedom lies in the absence of feeling, in the impenetrable mask of indifference. He has mistaken a Stoic's quiet strength for a man's emotional barrenness. And so, your quest for a deep, soul-level conversation becomes a sacred undertaking, not a mere act of communication. It requires a different kind of strategy, one rooted in psychological insight and a profound respect for the fragile architecture of the male ego. You must become a cartographer of the subconscious, learning to read the subtle signs of his inner world and to speak its language, a language of subtle invitation, of shared vulnerability, not of direct confrontation. Your goal is not to demand he open up, but to create a space so safe, so devoid of judgment, that he feels brave enough to venture into the unknown parts of himself, not for you, but for his own individuation. This journey is not about him changing for you. It is about you becoming so whole, so integrated, that your light naturally draws him out of his own darkness. The true architect of this new dynamic is not a manipulator, but a master of inner work. She understands that the man's resistance is a mirror reflecting her own unhealed neediness. The woman who demands emotional depth is often operating from a place of scarcity, a deep-seated belief that she is not enough on her own. This desperate energy, this unspoken pressure for him to be the one to fill her emotional void, is felt by his unconscious, like a premonition of suffocation. He senses that his emotional resources will be depleted, that he will be expected to carry the weight of her unintegrated shadow. This is the projection in reverse. He is not just reacting to his own fear, but also to her unspoken desperation. And so, the first, most crucial step in this alchemical process is to turn inward. You must become your own emotional sovereign. This is the path of individuation. As Jung would have it, the journey towards psychological wholeness. It is not about finding a man to complete you, but about becoming so complete in yourself that a man's presence becomes a chosen companion on your path, not a necessity. This means doing the hard, often painful work of confronting your own inner world. What are the sources of your longing for connection? Is it a fear of being alone? A belief that your worth is validated only through a deep partnership? Or a genuine, overflowing desire to share the richness of your inner life? The distinction is everything. A longing born of fear will only attract and repel simultaneously, a desperate orbit around a distant sunday. A longing born of an overflowing cup, however, is an invitation, an offering of abundance, not a plea for a handout. Consider the Stoic path once more, not for him, but for you. Marcus Aurelius reminds us, the universe is change. Our life is what our thoughts make it. Your thoughts about him, about yourself, and about the nature of a relationship are the clay from which your reality is molded. If you believe he is a closed-off, emotionally stunted man, you will find proof of this everywhere you look. Your expectations become a self-fulfilling prophecy. But if you see him as a man on his own journey, one who, like all of us, carries a silent burden, a fortress built to protect a tender heart, then your approach shifts entirely. You cease to be an interrogator and become a fellow traveler. You create a field of non-judgmental presence that is more magnetic than any line of questioning. The art of initiation, therefore, is not a verbal one. It is an act of being. It is the subtle, almost imperceptible shift in your own energy. This is where the magic lies. You stop trying to get something from him and start living so fully, so authentically, that your inner world becomes a destination in itself. You cultivate passions that fill you with joy, friendships that nourish your soul, and a relationship with yourself so strong it is impenetrable. When you are rooted in your own being, you are no longer a satellite in his orbit, but a star in your own right. This is the paradoxical power of detachment. By letting go of the outcome of whether he opens up or not, you create the very conditions for his curiosity to flourish. He will no longer feel the pressure to perform or to prove his emotional worth. Instead, he will simply witness your aliveness, your emotional resilience, and your quiet confidence. This is not a strategy, it is a way of life. The true goal is not a conversation, but a connection. And a connection is built not on words alone, but on shared presence. It is in the silent moments that the most profound truths are exchanged. It is in the shared laughter, the comfortable silence, the parallel solitude of two people reading in the same room. These are the building blocks of a true relationship, the quiet rituals that tell the unconscious mind, I am safe with you, I am seen, not for what I can give, but for who I am. When you master this art, the conversations you once craved will emerge naturally, not from a place of desperate longing, but from a place of mutual recognition. They will be the natural blossoming of a seed you planted long ago in the fertile soil of your own self-worth. There is a subtle but profound difference between chasing a connection and allowing one to form. The ego, in its insatiable hunger, chases. It seeks validation, assurance, and the reflection of its own worth in the eyes of another. The self, in its quiet wholeness, simply island. It exists in a state of abundance, a wellspring that does not need another to fill it, but from which others may drink if they choose. The man who shrinks from your questions is not necessarily rejecting you. He is often recoiling from the hungry energy of the ego, whether it is his own or yours. He senses the expectation, the unwritten contract that says, if you open up, you will validate me. If you share your soul, you will prove my desirability. This is the unvoiced pressure that sends his unconscious mind into retreat, and it has nothing to do with him and everything to do with the archetypal dance you are both performing. The art of true intimacy, therefore, is not a strategic campaign of clever questions. It is an act of surrendering the need for a specific outcome. This is the ultimate Stoic lesson applied to relationships. Epictetus taught that we must not seek for things to happen as we wish, but but to wish for things to happen as they do. The woman who wishes a man would open up is trying to control an external event. The empowered woman, the one on the path of individuation, recognizes that she can only control her own internal state. She releases her attachment to the outcome of any given conversation. She plants a seed of presence and then turns her attention back to her own garden. She understands that the most powerful thing she can do is to be so fully and authentically herself that her inner light becomes a gravitational force, a silent invitation that speaks louder than any words. This is the power of a quiet, unshakable self-worth. When a woman is not attached to the external validation of a man's emotional response, she becomes an enigma. Her presence is a comfortable, non-judgmental space, not a spotlight. She can sit in silence without the anxiety that so many mistake for intimacy's failure. This silence is not empty, it is pregnant with possibility. It is in these moments, reading a book across the room, sharing a quiet cup of coffee, or simply existing in parallel solitude, that the male unconscious begins to feel safe enough to stir. It is no longer an interrogation, but a sanctuary. He is not being asked to perform or to prove his emotional capacity. He is simply being offered the solace of a woman who is content in her own skin. A woman who does not need him to complete her. This is the profound paradox of attraction. The less you need, the more you draw. This is not a trick or a calculated strategy, it is the natural law of energy. Needy energy repels, whole, abundant energy attracts. He is drawn to the mystery of a woman who is not trying to be a certain way, who is not performing for his approval. He is drawn to the peace he feels in her presence, a peace he may have been running from his entire life. Her self-sufficiency is a mirror, not a demand. It shows him what is possible, that he, too, can find peace and freedom in his own being, a place where his emotions are not a threat, but a source of strength. She does not offer to heal his wounds. She offers the example of a person who has taken responsibility for her own. The deep conversations you long for will emerge from this ground of non-demand. They will not be forced by a question, but invited by a shared moment of vulnerability, often unintentional. He may speak of a childhood memory, not because you asked, but because a song on the radio brought it to the surface. He may share a secret fear, not because you pressured him, but because the quiet safety of your presence made it feel possible for the first time. This is the slow, deliberate work of emotional trust. It is built brick by brick, not by a single, dramatic revelation, but through the 1,000 small acts of mutual respect, unspoken understanding, and the shared comfort of silence. It is the recognition of one soul by another, a quiet knowing that transcends the limitations of the ego and the anxieties of the past. Your true power lies not in your ability to make him open up, but in your ability to be so complete that he feels safe enough to be himself. To be this woman, this sovereign of her own soul, is to stand in the quiet power of not needing. It is the ultimate act of defiant self-love. You are no longer a satellite, orbiting his emotional core and awaiting his signal of validation. You are the sun, a self-contained source of light and warmth. This shift in your internal locus of control is what changes the entire dynamic. The man is not the one to be coaxed out of his cave. He is the one who, in his own time, must learn to walk toward the light you so effortlessly radiate. This is the essence of true magnetic attraction, not a strategy, but a state of being. The uninitiated woman mistakes emotional availability for a linear goal. She believes that if she follows the right steps, asks the right questions, or displays the right kind of vulnerability, the fortress will crumble. But the psyche does not operate in straight lines. It moves in spirals, in cycles of light and shadow. The man's retreat is not a failure. It is a sign that you have touched a part of him that has long been dormant, a part of him that holds both his deepest potential and his most profound fear. The fear is not of you, but of the responsibility that comes with integration. He senses that if he were to truly open up to you, he would have to face the unhealed wounds he has so carefully buried, the childhood slights, the inherited trauma, the silent grief of a life lived without full feeling. He fears that your love, your acceptance, would be too much for his fragile ego to bear. This is where the feminine power of patience, of holding space, becomes an act of radical grace. You become the container, the safe harbor in which he can, if he chooses, begin to navigate these treacherous waters. You do not demand a map of his emotional landscape. You simply stand on the shore, a beacon of safety. Your own journey of individuation is your greatest asset. The more you have integrated your own shadow, the more you have embraced your own vulnerabilities and imperfections, the more you signal to him, on a non-verbal, archetypal level, that it is safe to be imperfect. You show him, through your own actions, that true strength lies not in the absence of fear, but in the courage to face it. The Stoics knew this. Epictetus advised, "Do not seek to have things happen as you wish, but wish for them to happen as they do, and you will go on well." The modern woman, so often taught to be a planner, a strategist, and a fixer, must unlearn this impulse. You cannot fix him. You cannot plan his emotional awakening. Your only power is over yourself. And in mastering your own internal state, in cultivating emotional detachment from the outcome, in practicing radical self-acceptance, and in living from a place of abundance, you do more to invite deep connection than any textbook script ever could. You become a living, breathing testament to the profound truth that a woman who is whole does not need to be completed. She simply chooses to share her wholeness. This is the final, most crucial lesson. The conversations you once sought from him will begin to flow not as a result of your pursuit, but as a byproduct of your own fulfillment. When you are no longer looking to him to be your source of emotional nourishment, you free him from the impossible burden of your expectations. He is no longer a man to be cracked open, but simply a man to be known. And in the quiet intimacy of that knowing, the walls he built so long ago may, for the first time, begin to feel less like a fortress and more like a prison he is finally ready to escape. This is not a win or a victory. It is a profound and mutual recognition of two souls on a solitary, yet shared, journey toward wholeness. You don't change him, you change yourself, and in doing so, you give him the space to become the man he was always meant to be.